I sat down and I took an objective, practical, logical, non-biased watch at Leaving Neverland. Afterwards, I was shocked. You probably will be too. Wanna know why? Well, let me tell you. Hey, what's up? What's up? It's your man Harkan Ajala, aka the Enlightened Bad Boy Genius. And I just watched all 4 hours of HBO's new documentary, Leaving Neverland. And I gotta be honest, I'm stunned. I'm dumbfounded. My mouth is open on the floor. And the reason why is because I've watched hundreds of documentaries in my lifetime. I'm working on actually prepping a documentary of my own right now. And I've never in my life seen a documentary that was so done, not like a documentary. I mean, it's really stunning. I am a experienced and trained marketer. 12 years I did that. And my impression of Leaving Neverland was that this basically was like a 4-hour video sales letter. And it's designed to sell the public on these two guys, Wade Robson and James Safechuck's story as being true, sell the public on them being horrific victims who are deserving of not just sympathy, but who are deserving of some kind of compensation. They still are broken and they need to be made whole from this. And that's key, I think, really key in my opinion. And also to pre-answer any objections that any logical, reasonable person is going to have. Objections that they know people are going to have. And that is what any good video sales letter or sales copy is designed to do. To come up with and understand what are the objections, right, that people are going to have, and answer those objections ahead of time before people can bring them up. And so obviously there are a lot of facts out there that both of these guys and the filmmaker, Dan Reed, I believe his name was, knew were going to come up. But the funny thing is, the filmmaker, Dan Reed himself, this is why I say, I've never seen any documentary that did this. The filmmaker doesn't ask any of the, not just tough, but any obvious questions based on the facts that are out there about these guys' stories. He just allows these guys to present their stories, and to kind of lay out, this is why I did this or didn't do that, said this or didn't say that, unfettered. This whole thing didn't come across to me like a documentary as much as like not even an interview, more like a Hollywood puff piece, infomercial type interview where you just kind of let the star promote whatever product, movie, new release, book, album release, or narrative that they want to promote. I challenge you, again, I'm prepping a documentary myself, but I've seen hundreds of them. I challenge you to find any other documentarian, a professional, acclaimed documentarian who would watch this and say, yeah, that's how you do it. And that's how we do it. And that's how it should be done. I mean, it is unbelievable, really, when you watch it. You find yourself saying, I can't believe nobody's asking these dudes this question or that question. much less if you know any of the facts that are established out there about these two guys. It's unthinkable that they wouldn't be included. Now, let me give you some full disclosure, okay? First off, I'm a massive fan of Michael Jackson's music and his talent, okay? Massive fan. Michael Jackson is not, he's not a once in a lifetime talent. He was a once in a universal cycle talent, right? You don't get a Michael Jackson every 100 years. You get one possibly in the life of the universe. His talent was incredible, but I'm not and never was a fan of Michael Jackson, the persona or the man. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, I'm not somebody who would have ran after his. I'm not somebody who would have camped out outside his house or ran after his entourage or what have you. If I'd met him, I would have loved to talk to him. I would have gave him a pound. But I would have loved to hear his thoughts on his music and his artistry, that conversation. But I'm not a fan. So I decided to go into viewing this documentary as if I believed he was a child molester and that these guys are telling the truth. I wanted to go into it on the complete other side because I wanted to give them, I didn't want any biases of my own to complicate or cloud the way I viewed this documentary. Child sexual abuse is too important, okay? Nobody gets a pass on that shit. Y'all know, if you've seen my videos, you know how hard I have always been on R. Kelly because I saw proof with my own eyes the motherfucker was a pedophile and he's sick. Now, anybody else can play with that if they want to, but anybody who saw that tape way back in 2000 or whatever, whenever it came out, saw it with their own eyes. And I was like, this dude is sick. He's got to be put away. He's got to be taken away from, not for revenge, but because he's got to be stopped and not given access to be able to do this to any other kids, any other young kids or people. So nobody gets a pass on this shit. But when I sat down, like I said, I went in expecting to believe them, wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt and saying, hey, either this is going to further confirm that or it's going to be a long way the other way to dispel it. But I'm telling you, I mean, you sit down and watch this. If you've seen the art, let me give you an example. Let me just say this. If you sit down and watch this, even if you don't know anything else about the facts of the case, this thing is not, it's just not convincing. These guys aren't convincing. Their stories are not convincing, even inside the documentary. You know, it starts off because when you hear the graphic depictions of the sexual abuse, it's sensational, and that grabs you. And they kind of marketed this whole thing around that. They knew that was kind of their ticket. People would want to see this because of those things and because of Michael Jackson's legacy, obviously, right? But the more you listen and watch, these guys really just don't come across as convincing, and their stories don't come across as really making sense even to a lay person. And to a person, listen, I majored in psychology in college, okay? I know about how this works. I've studied and read from experts in child sexual abuse. I understand the complexities of how people can react to it and all that. But I'm telling you, a lot of this shit just doesn't ring true. And when you're watching the documentary, it's hard to not feel that the filmmaker himself is complicit in kind of wanting to take advantage of the sensationalism of this, and you know, he's like, hey, I can have a hit documentary if I do this subject, because he would have to know a lot of the facts outside of this documentary. At no time does he question. He doesn't not only ask tough questions, he doesn't ask them any questions about their stories, about why they changed it after years and years and years. He just kind of lets it all play out. And the fact that he does that, it doesn't come across authentic. You know, before this came out, I found from the very beginning something he said, the way he characterized this as odd. You know, he was talking about this documentary before it even released, and he said, you know, this is not a documentary about Michael Jackson. This is about these two guys' stories. And I remember thinking, you fucking nuts. Of course it's about Michael Jackson. The only reason anybody wants to watch it is going to want to watch it is because it's Michael Jackson who's being accused. The only reason anybody's paying attention to these two guys' stories on a national level is because they're accusing Michael Jackson. The only reason your documentary is being made and released by HBO is, you know, because it's about Michael Jackson. So that in and of itself is disingenuous on a level that's ridiculous for anybody with any just even a reasonable intellect. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why would he say that? Well, what he was doing is he was saying that in relation to the fact he was trying to defend why he had not interviewed anybody from the Michael Jackson estate. He didn't interview any of Michael Jackson's lawyers. He doesn't interview anybody in this documentary outside of these two guys and some of their family members. So he doesn't talk to or interview anybody who could give a second side of the story or even an alternative view or rebut anything that these guys are saying. Michael Jackson's dead, right? And so these guys can come out now and say whatever they want to say. And we know Michael himself can't respond. That's interesting. That's interesting. And it's especially interesting when you take into account some of the facts that he never talks about or touches or questions him on. Here's the thing. I mean, these guys are like, believe us, believe us. They're taking advantage, in my opinion, of the Me Too movement train, which says, believe the survivors, believe the survivors, believe the survivors' stories. Now that in and of itself is one of the problematic parts of the Me Too movement, because I believe it's led to shit like this. People who can come and take advantage by saying, well, you should believe me, I'm a survivor. I'm saying that somebody abused me, and then presenting their story without any evidence or any proof. There's no evidence, no witnesses, no proof to anything that they're saying in this documentary. And they're coming out and saying you should believe me. But let's look at some of the facts outside the case. Like, he doesn't even mention the fact that these two guys filed a $1.5 billion civil suit. That means they want money against the Michael Jackson estate a few years ago. Now, they say in this documentary that they realized that Michael had abused them long before he died. But they wait until after he dies, several years after he dies, to file this lawsuit. The lawsuit was thrown out, dismissed by a judge. And on top of that, James Safechuck says that he realized he'd been abused by Michael Jackson. He'd truly been sexually abused when he saw Wade Robson's 2013 interview with Matt Lauer saying, hey, I'm coming out now saying that Michael Jackson abused me. Look, if you watch this documentary, you'll see what I'm talking about. There are a lot of things in the way that they present the story, the justifications on why they're changing story, why they never said anything earlier. I mean, it just doesn't ring true. I'm just being honest about it. It just doesn't ring true. Here's the truth of the matter. These guys are liars one way or another. Because if what they're saying is true, then they lied for 20 plus years of their lives, saying that Michael Jackson never did anything, never touched them, never molested them, never did anything inappropriate, insisting on that. One of them, Wade Robson, doing it under penalty of perjury in a legal court of law on the stand. He was cross-examined for 2 hours by a vicious prosecuting attorney for 2 hours in the 2005 trial. He insists Michael did nothing. He did that of his own free will. So they were lying for all that time, or they're lying now. You see what I'm saying? And so we always have a problem when we're dealing with people who are liars. They're saying, well, I lied all this time. Why should we believe you now? You see? That's what Smart Black People TV is all about. Facts, logic, reason, critical thinking. You know, and if you're going to make extraordinary claims about anything at any time, you have to have extraordinary proof. You have to have extraordinary evidence to back those claims up. These guys haven't presented any of it in this documentary or elsewhere. There's a portion in there, a portion in the documentary, a scene where James Safechuck he says, and this is another one of these sensationalist things that I'm sure they felt like, oh man, people are going to want to see this because of this. He says, alleges that he and Michael Jackson, when he was 10 or 11 or whatever, that they had a mock wedding in the hotel room one day. They wrote down vows and they said these vows to each other. And he says that then they went out and bought a wedding ring, and Michael gave it to this kid and was like, this is our wedding ring. So he's got a box full of jewelry in the scene in this film, and he's holding the jewelry gingerly, and he's talking about these good memories and loving Michael and when this all happened. And then he picks up the wedding ring, and it's like the camera's close on his hand, and his hand's kind of shaking, and it's shaking for a long time through the whole shot. And then at the end he says, you can see my hand is shaking even holding this. This is really hard. I mean, it's like, to call attention to that just doesn't ring true. And I'm going to tell you, Wade Robson, I hope he's never been in any movies as an actor. He's one of the worst actors I've ever seen in my life. Like, the way he delivers his story, I mean, stilted dialogue. I mean, it's not, he sounds like a very, very bad actor delivering lines. Trying to emote, trying to seem broken up. It just, none of it rings true. I'm sorry, I'm being real about it. You can watch it for yourself and you'll see what I'm talking about. Just does not come across as true at all. And again, you have to ask yourself, why would Dan not hit on any of this? He doesn't talk to anybody. In 4 hours, he includes, I believe, 2 minutes, literally, of rebuttal. And it's like TMZ stuff, Omarion reacting on TMZ, and then a couple of like Michael Jackson super fans. He's trying to get across, it appears, that, oh, it's just super fans that didn't believe this stuff, that question this stuff. Nah. Again, this thing is a documentary. Is really kind of embarrassing. It's really a travesty. I'm being honest. I can't say these guys are lying, I wasn't there. But like I said, if you're going to make extraordinary claims, especially when there's so much evidence pointing to reasons you would lie, you got to have some extraordinary proof, extraordinary evidence, and none of it's here. So, you know, people are going to go round and round, back and forth, especially people who are already lodged on either side. But to me, this thing is really simple. And the reasons to question it outside of the documentary itself are, I think, best summed up really concisely and without a whole lot of extra verbiage in a piece that Joe Vogels wrote for Forbes. And he wrote this before the documentary came out and before he'd seen it. He's a guy who's done an extensive amount of research on Michael Jackson and these allegations. Understand, folks, the FBI investigated Michael Jackson. They wrote a 300-page report saying, yeah, we can't find anything. Michael Jackson went through a trial in 2005. 10 counts lodged against him. Nothing was found. The simple fact of the matter is, whatever you feel about Michael Jackson, if you go and you look at the evidence, there's nothing there that corroborates him being a child molester. The two kids, I mean, the Jordy Chandler thing, see, most people haven't actually looked at this stuff. They've just formed an opinion either way. Go back and read the information about the Jordy Chandler case, the first case in 96. Go back and listen to the recording where somebody caught the father of Jordy Chandler, basically threatening Michael Jackson and saying, hey, if I release this, you're going to be done. I'm going to get everything I want. I mean, it's all there. Go and look at the I forget the kid's name, from the 2005 case, Garvin or something like that. Just go look it up. It's a fucking mess. That thing should have never went to trial. The evidence just really isn't there. And like I said, the best way I've seen it all encapsulated, that best explains the real problems with this documentary and in the greater context, was written by Joe Vogel. Let me read that to you really quickly so you can see what I'm talking about. Joe Vogel wrote in Forbes in an article, What You Should Know About the New Michael Jackson Documentary. Again, he gives a disclaimer that he'd never seen this, but that he wants to bring context to the allegations in the documentary. So Joe writes, when Michael Jackson died in 2009, Wade Robson, the former choreographer whose allegations of abuse are at the center of a controversial new documentary, Leaving Neverland, wrote in tribute to his friend. Now these are, by the way, Wade Robson's words. He wrote it. Michael Jackson changed the world and, more personally, my life forever. He is the reason I dance, the reason I make music, and one of the main reasons I believe in the pure goodness of humankind. Those are Wade Robson's own words. He has been a close friend of mine for 20 years. His music, his movement, his personal words of inspiration and encouragement, and his unconditional love will live inside of me forever. I will miss him immeasurably, but I know that he is now at peace and enchanting the heavens with a melody and a moonwalk. Now, as Joe Vogel wrote, Robson was 27 years old at the time. 4 years earlier, he testified at Jackson's 2005 trial as an adult that nothing sexual ever happened between them. Prior to the trial, Robson hadn't seen Jackson for years and was under no obligation to be a witness for the defense. He faced a withering cross-examination, understanding the penalty of perjury for lying under oath. But Robson adamantly, confidently, and credibly asserted that nothing sexual ever happened. What changed between then and now? A few things, and this is where the stuff is important, that you understand these facts. Remember I talked about facts outside of the documentary that Dan Reed, the filmmaker, never hit or even broached? Here's some of those facts that Joe Vogel lists. In 2011, Robson approached John Branca, co-executor of the Michael Jackson estate, about directing the new Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil production, One. Robson admitted he wanted the job badly, but the estate ultimately chose someone else for the position. In 2012, Robson had a nervous breakdown, triggered, he said, by an obsessive quest for success. His career, in his own words, began to crumble. Now, I got to point some things out during reading this. Again, none of this is talked about in the documentary, but in the documentary, Wade Robson, he insinuates that this nervous breakdown he had was triggered by him beginning to understand and going into depression about the sexual abuse from Michael Jackson. He and his wife as well. Okay. Vogel continues, that same year, with Robson's career, finances, and marriage in peril, he began shopping a book that claimed he was sexually abused by Michael Jackson. No publisher picked it up. I can imagine why, because almost any publisher would say, your book's not gonna have any credibility based on your previous statements, Wade. Okay. In 2013 then, Robson filed a $1.5 billion civil lawsuit and creditor's claim, along with James Safechuck, who also spent time with Jackson in the late 80s. Safechuck claimed he only realized he may have been abused when Robson filed his lawsuit. That lawsuit was dismissed by a probate court in 2017. Now, come 2019, the Sundance Film Festival premiered a documentary based entirely on Robson and Safechuck's allegations. While the documentary is obviously emotionally disturbing, given the context, it presents no new evidence or witnesses. The film's director, Dan Reed, acknowledged not wanting to interview other key figures because it might complicate or compromise the story he wanted to tell. Now, Joe Vogels goes on to say, it is tempting for the media to tie Jackson into a larger cultural narrative about sexual misconduct. R. Kelly was rightfully taken down by a documentary, and many other high-profile figures have been exposed in recent years. So surely the logic goes, Michael Jackson must be guilty as well. Yet that is a dangerous leap, particularly with America's history of unjustly targeting and convicting black men, that fair-minded people would be wise to consider more carefully before condemning the artist. It is no accident that one of Jackson's favorite books and movies was To Kill a Mockingbird, a story about a black man, Tom Robinson, destroyed by false allegations. The media's largely uncritical, decontextualized takes out of Sundance seem to have forgotten. No allegations have been more publicly scrutinized than those against Michael Jackson. They elicited a 2-year feeding frenzy in the mid-90s and then again in the mid-2000s when Jackson faced an exhaustive criminal trial. His homes were ransacked in, remember, 2 unannounced raids by law enforcement. Unannounced raids. 2 of them. Nothing incriminating was found. Jackson was acquitted of all charges in 2005 by a conservative Santa Maria jury. The FBI likewise conducted a thorough investigation. Its 300-page file, which you can go and look at on the Popstar, released under the Freedom of Information Act, found no evidence of wrongdoing. Okay. Now let me ask you, if you watch this documentary, you telling me that in those 2 unannounced raids, if Michael Jackson was this sexual predator that these 2 dudes are saying, nothing would have been found? Really? Meanwhile, dozens of individuals who spent time with Jackson as kids continue to assert nothing sexual ever happened. This includes hundreds of sick and terminally ill children, such as Bella Farkas, for whom Jackson paid for a life-saving liver transplant, and Ryan White, whom Jackson befriended and supported in his final years battling AIDS. It also includes lesser-known figures like Brett Barnes and Frank Cascio. It includes celebrities like Macaulay Culkin, Sean Lennon, Emmanuel Lewis, Alfonso Ribeiro, and Corey Feldman. It includes Jackson's nieces and nephews, and it includes his own 3 children. Let me just throw in here, it's like, somebody, a sexual predator, a child molester. This is typically a compulsive deal, right? You don't just pick 2 people out or even 4 people out of hundreds and abuse them sexually and everybody else you let go. It doesn't work that. You don't just turn it off and on. Joe Vogels continues, the allegations surrounding Jackson largely faded over the past decade for a reason. Unlike the Bill Cosby or R. Kelly cases, the more people looked into the Jackson allegations, the more the evidence vindicated him. In contrast to Robson and Safechuck's revised accounts, there is a remarkable consistency to the way people who knew the artist speak of him, whether friends, family members, collaborators, fellow artists, recording engineers, attorneys, business associates, security guards, former spouses, his own children, people who knew him in every capacity imaginable. Michael, they say, was gentle, brilliant, sensitive, sometimes naive, sometimes childish, sometimes oblivious to perceptions, but none believe he was a child molester. That's Joe Vogels' take based on his exhaustive research. That took about 10 minutes to read, but it's important that you actually have the facts to provide context, because what happens a lot of times, especially in the social media age that we live in, with things like a documentary like Leaving Neverland, is they throw out some sensationalist information, people start talking on social media, making statements that are not validated, statements that are not verified, statements that can't be proven, and then people start getting paid. People start cashing in, making money on books and movies and interviews and getting attention and all kinds of shit based on non-facts and quasi-logic. Again, I ask you, with everything that I just read to you, explain to me why this filmmaker, Dan Reed, in the middle of his two subjects here, posing like fucking in sync, explain to me why he deemed it unnecessary and of no value to ask either of these two guys about any of that shit during the documentary, nor does he include any information about any of it. Explain to me how it even gives any realistic, logical, reasonable, rational picture of how to take these two dudes' allegations. Explain to me how this guy, Dan Reed, didn't think any of that was worthy of including in his documentary. Because the only thing I can come up with is the only rational conclusion, which is he didn't want to discredit any reason for even making this documentary. You feel me? So again, simple fact of the matter is there have been countless thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours poured into trying to see if Michael Jackson was a child molester. There's been no evidence. But in particular with these two guys, all of the logical evidence, proof, etc., points to them being liars, not to them telling the truth. The only thing they have in terms of telling the truth is their word and this very incomplete, I have to say it, bullshit so-called documentary, quasi-documentary. And so, I'm sorry, taking all that into account and taking into account the fact that I've personally seen this Leaving Neverland for myself, in my opinion, instead of calling it Leaving Neverland, it should have been called Scamming Neverland. Because this comes across to me as a big fat fucking scam to get money. Sorry. That's how it breaks down. So I appreciate you being here. As always, I want to thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, if you found value in it, if it made you think, if it informed you in any way, that's what we're here to do. And I ask you to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel, and then support us. Help us support us in our mission to spread empowering, enlightening, and intelligent information to Black people and smart people around the world. Go over to www.smartblackpeople.com/rise up and become a patron member and help support us. And in response, we'll give you amazing free gift. You'll see that when you get there. As always, I want to say, remember what Smart Black People TV is all about. Extract the emotion, insert the intelligence. Ain't nobody gonna save us but us. So as always, stay black, stay happy, stay sexy, stay smart. Live, love to die, baby. Peace.